Now it's the end of the conference. I think it is time for us to take a look at not just what has been, but also what can be and where we are going from here on. And so I'd just like to give you a brief outlook of what is coming at the end of the month, namely in Mahara 1704. And that is really exciting, and over the last couple of days you've already heard a number of the things that we are working on, especially when you were there on Wednesday at the pre-Hui, but also in conversations it has come through what we are working on and what we are planning to do and what you might be able to expect. And so hopefully a bunch of you will also be able to upgrade very soon so that you can take advantage of all those new functionalities. So let me get started with that. But before we do so, just backtracking to the beginning of the year, you might have noticed that the Mahara logo looks somewhat different than what you saw last year, and then all the cute characters that we have. And that is due to us having done a rebranding. We decided after 10 years of having pretty much the same logo that we kind of want to look into, well, how can we also modernize ourselves and in the look and feel to make it something that people still also want to look at. And so our fabulous designer Yvonne created a slightly different Mahara logo for us. It still has the same meaning in there. It is still recognizable as being Mahara, but we just kind of did a rebranding like other like companies oftentimes do after some time. And we are really happy about that because it is a nice, clean, modern look. Not just to the logo, but also to the colors. We have a color scheme that we can now use, so everything is kind of nice and consistent. And so from henceforth, you will always see this logo. But our characters still stay the cuddly people that we have developed. So they will still be around because they look more like persons. Because the software is not just about the software itself, but it is really about the people who contribute to it. And you all are contributors to Mahara by being users, by being teachers, by being learners, by testing it, by designing, by developing code, and so on. So everybody in the community contributes to the software, and not just the people like Cecilia and Robert who write the actual code. Because we in the core Mahara development team kind of need to know what you actually want to have and how it's supposed to look like. And that's where your expertise really comes in. And with that rebrand, we also rebranded our Mahara.org website, again, to also showcase what is possible with Mahara. Because a lot of you have been using Mahara for quite a number of years. And so what we also wanted to show is, well, how can you change it from that standard look and feel that you're used to? How creative can you get? And so we are using Mahara.org to showcase that to you and inspire you to maybe make some changes, to see how far you want to take it when you have people on hand who can help you with that. Again, because we rebranded, we also have a new default theme in Mahara 1704, which incorporates all our colors, kind of brings some of that identity that we developed for Mahara.org back into core Mahara, so that you can take advantage of it. We've also updated our navigation. For the longest time, you've been used to that navigation at the top one level. You might have used the drop-down menu, but a lot of people still use the tabs, and then you kind of get to 3 levels of navigation when you're within a group, and so on. So kind of is a lot of navigation before you actually get to the text. And because a lot of people these days also use mobile devices, we thought, well, what if we kind of try to merge these two and make one navigation that is recognizable and that people use across all devices. And so we came up with a more app-styled navigation. So now you can find all navigation elements in the top right corner. The first icon that you'll see with a little chevron going downwards is for the user menu. So there you reach all those things that you usually reach by clicking on settings and your name, and you have them nicely available there. If you're in the lucky position, or in some cases maybe unlucky position, if you get inundated by lots of user questions of being an administrator, you also have a wrench there. And there you solely have your administration menu. So we really separated out the admin menu from the normal menu so that there's no confusion of where people are at. And then you have your regular menu on the right-hand side, the hamburger. And that is all the way at the end because that is the menu that you're most likely going to use most frequently. So it should be on the easiest accessible area for you. And from there you can reach all the regular portfolio areas that you have been used to. So we look forward to hearing from you what you like about this menu, whether you prefer the old one. Since we are in a transition period, we still make the old menu available. You just have to switch the raw theme to the old style. And that is then explained how to do that in the user manual, so that anybody who'd still kind of like to hang on to the old way of doing things for a little while longer can still use that. Another big thing, and definitely one of the two biggest new features in Mahara.core this time around in April, is that we've finally been able to combine pages and collections. We've been talking and discussing that for quite some time, and this time around we at Catalyst said, well, let's do it and see what we can do in order to bring those two things together, because essentially we don't really want to talk too much about pages and collections. We want to talk about portfolios. It just happens to be that one portfolio is small, just one page, and other portfolios consist of a lot of content, which you just happen to divide up into a lot of pages. And so merging those two is important so that you don't always have to worry about, well, am I working in a page? Am I working in a collection? Where are my things? And so we've enlisted the help of our UX team because they're really great in knowing what people like to do these days in the world, how they are interacting with software, how they are interacting with websites. We've also enlisted the help of all you who've been here at Mahara Hui 2 years ago in order to get some ideas what you'd like to see from a very early proposal that we had. And if you were here 2 years ago, you will see that it doesn't look like anything that we've proposed back then. It looks very different because 2 years have passed. So we thought, well, let's give it to our UX team again and see whether they want to make any changes. And sure enough, things had moved on in the world of the internet. As Mark told us yesterday, things move very quickly. And so we came up with a very vastly differently design. And I'll just briefly step you through that so that you can see the individual elements. But first, the most important thing is we have pages and collections combined. So you have pages sitting next to collections. And the default listing is according to the last modified date. Because the idea behind that is, if you modified something last, if you added something to another one collection, then you are most likely wanting to add to that yet again, and not to one that you've created 5 or 10 years ago. So all those recent work bubbles up. One thing you see directly here on this screen are the access permissions. So you don't have to go into Shared by Me in order to find out with whom have I actually shared my portfolio. You know immediately if the log is locked, I haven't shared it with anybody. If it is unlocked, I've shared it. And then you can click on the icon to find out with whom you have shared it. We don't provide all the details, so if you put timeframes in, I make my portfolio accessible from today for 3 days, then you don't see this here because we also don't want to overwhelm people on the screen. But we do give the basic information. And you can also easily go and change the access. Go and give people permission to access your portfolio, or go and create a secret URL. So that you can do everything directly from this overview screen rather than having to remember, oh, I need to go to Portfolio Shared by Me. The next one is when you are looking at a collection, then you can click on the number with the papers and you see immediately how many pages are within your collection. So besides the very light outline of making it three-dimensional and showing you that there are more pieces of paper there or more pages, you also have the visual cue of the number and the icon to immediately know that is a collection. And within that, you see all your page titles. The first one in this example here has a different icon, and that is because it's a smart evidence collection. So you'll also see very easily, oh yes, here's a framework attached. And if you don't see that icon, then you have everything else in regular pages. And you can click on an individual page right from this list in order to get to it. And you can also scroll. So if your collection consists of 26 pages, it'll still scroll very nicely. And you have also easy access to editing, deleting, or in the case of collections, also managing the collection. And something that we have never displayed before is that you now also see when you've created a page or a collection and when you've last modified it. So for some reason, we never made that information available. We've always had it in the database, and we always helped you sort your portfolio pages according to the date, but it's never been visible. And now with the help of these small menus, you can look at it very quickly and then know when you last looked at it, or when you've created it, when you've modified it, and don't have to put that specific information directly on the page.
Can I also mention that if you've submitted your collection on page, it will show that information in that box as well?
Yes, and so Robert mentioned if you submitted your collection or a page, it'll also show the submission date in there. And that way it is also very easy for you to see. And of course, submitted portfolios still have their different background so that you can also notice that straight away. So lots of new functionality in there. Rearranging of information, and hopefully that'll make it easier for students and for instructors, especially those that haven't worked with Mahara for a very long time and are used to all that functionality and where the clicks are and how you quickly move around, to make it easier for them to get started and to also continue working with it, because the learning curve is not that high and you have easy access to all the important elements that you might need for your portfolio. The other big thing that we've been working on was the integration with learning management systems. Robert presented on that specifically yesterday, so I'm not going to repeat all that he had said and just mention it very briefly. In particular, we worked on LTI, Learning Tools Interoperability, and made it possible with the help of instructor to create single sign-on between a learning management system and Mahara, not just between Moodle and Mahara, as we've heard earlier from Jeremy, who's using MNet, and rather pretty much any learning management system can now be connected to Mahara for single sign-on, so that students don't have to create yet another login and password. We are planning on expanding that functionality, as you've heard yesterday. So if you are interested in being involved in that, maybe being guinea pigs, trying things out, seeing if it works for you, then please do let me know so that we can keep you updated on that. Thanks to the Donau University in Krems and Professor who created that functionality, you can now also see friend activity directly on your dashboard. If you're a power user of Mahara, you might have already experimented with a watch list. So when you go to a page of somebody else, you can put that onto your watch list so that you get a notification when they add content to their page, when they update their page. However, that requires you to actually click that button and make sure that you put it on your watch list. So it would be slightly better, of course, if that was pretty much done automatically for you. And voila, that's where the friend activity comes in. Because as soon as you have a friend and they've shared something with you, or they shared something with the public, or with registered users, or with you as a member of a group, and that you are their friend, then you will see that page come up in your friend activity watch list on your dashboard. So no extra adding that to your watch list anymore. And you can also sort it according to reverse chronological order or according to people. And you can also say which portfolios you want to see. So maybe you only want to see any portfolios that have been shared with you or made available to you or modified with you over the last week, because you log into your portfolio once a week or every other week and only want to see those. Or maybe you want to see everything from the last year. So that's very comfortable, again, bringing information to you rather than requiring you to acquire information. And something that a lot of you have also sorely missed, I see big smiles in the room, is that we have a better print style sheet. We've kind of didn't really provide a style sheet for the longest time because PDF is not really a great way of saving things, especially when you have a video in there or when you have a folder or when you have files to download, because they are just links. And the style sheet that we had kind of always showed you all the long URLs. So that wasn't really nice to give to somebody. But now we actually do have a proper print style sheet, and that does really just make a snapshot. So it's kind of like taking an image of your page and you can save it to your computer. Doesn't help all the cases that we might want to cover, but it does solve a lot of people's concerns of making a printout. It also works really well actually with the retractable blocks, or if you use the resume or the plans, because usually you just see one line and then you have to click it in order to show a description or the full details. Well, Robert found a way of having it expanded all the time so that you can actually see all the details directly when you look at the printout. So you don't lose as much information as you might think. And so that could be one way of submitting work into Turnitin if you really, really have to, because your text is available. And so that's something to explore. Something slightly more technical, you can now also inherit a child theme. So earlier in Gina's presentation, we saw the primary school theme, which is very colorful, has icons in the navigation. Also in the new navigation, it keeps the icons, it changes colors between the menu items and so on. And so if you said, well, I really, really like that idea of how this theme was created, I just want to change the colors, or I just want to make some other small changes, then you don't have to copy this theme and make your own and make all changes, but you can build yours on top of that primary school theme and really only providing the changes that you need. So you're kind of inheriting things. You're not cloning things. And the advantage of that really is when we make changes to the primary school theme, you don't have to make those changes to your own theme, but they just bubble up to your theme, and you might just need to tweak one thing instead of 5 or 6. And so makes it easier for you, less work on your designer, front-end staff member, because they can just take advantage of what we provide in core and then just make the very necessary changes. And another thing, seemingly small, but actually quite powerful, is that you can now also display profile information in the user search. This was functionality that we've developed for Northland District Health Board for Mahara portfolio. And initially, the idea was conceived of, oh yeah, we just create that functionality for the platform. But then Robert thought, well, hang on, can't we make it so that next time a new profile field needs to be put into that user search table, and we can just make it more configurable and make it easier also for other people to take advantage of that. Because they wanted to see the APC number, so nursing registration number in the profile, and also wanted to be able to search for that or see that when they export users. And so instead of just hacking it into their instance and having it available for them, we put a more generic feature into Mahara that allows you to connect to that, so that you only have to create a small customization on your part and say which profile field you actually want to display in that user search. and then can be displayed. And that, of course, also means that it can be exported in the CSV export. So if you want to export all the blog addresses of your students, if you ask them to put that in, then that can be exported. If you want to export their home address, then it would be in that export. And you would also see it in the user search. So it's more comfortable, some admin functionality that we also put in there. And that's not all, but all the other features are kind of on the smaller side of things. And so I thought I'm not going to bore you with all the new features that we have put in, but really only highlight the big ones that I thought are of interest to you, that you might want to take a look at when you get the chance to explore the new version. And of course, we've also fixed a lot of bugs. That's kind of our bread and butter as well, not just putting new features in, but also making sure that old functionality actually works as we were expecting it, because it's really fascinating to see how differently people use Mahara. And so some ways that you interact with the software we might not have thought of, and you discover wealth of functionality that might be slightly buggy. So we kind of need to fix that up so that you are still happy. But we also always try to put some new features into the software itself so that we are not just stagnating, but always moving forward, always looking at usability, also accessibility and user-friendliness, and what functionality is very useful for portfolio processes. So what I can't really tell you is what we are going to put into Mahara 17.10, because that question might pop up. Lots of people always ask us about our roadmap. Our generic roadmap is we'll try to improve all the things that we have, put new features in, and also improve usability. And the very specific things that go into a release, these are up to you. Because new features are decided by the community through community funding, or maybe Mark at some point wants to contribute a feature back to Mahara Core. That's how features go in. I'll get on to that next week and poke him, because I actually already wrote down that CLI script he wrote for the bulk export of portfolios might actually be something very interesting. And so we are also trying to not just do everything ourselves at Catalyst, but really also involve people from the community. And so we see Gregor from POFSOT contributing on a regular basis. We have Canadian universities contributing to Mahara, people in the UK, people in Australia. And so it's really bigger than just us. And we are there to assist community contributors as well. Yes, yeah. And so now I've kind of talked about what we've put into Mahara. And some of you, especially if you have to wait for a flight for a couple of hours, might want to check those features out. So you're very, very happy to test those things. I've put the link in here to the forum post where it gives you all the details of the new features, and also where you can find a test instance where you can immediately explore them. And we'd like your feedback on it. Because right now we are in pre-release. We just published the release candidate last week. So that's kind of like a beta version. And for the next 2 weeks approximately, we invite feedback from everybody in the community to tell us, well, is there still something that doesn't work? Because if something doesn't work, we kind of should be fixing that before we release it to the world. And so everybody who has a bit of spare time, it would be fantastic to take a look at an instance. You don't even have to install your own Mahara testing instance. You can use one of our development servers for that, and give it a go. Explore the new Pages and Collections feature. See how you like it. See if the icons make sense to you, if they work on your iPad, if they work on your Android device, if they work on your Windows. While we do test across a number of devices, we are not always aware of all the workflows that you have. And if you do have the chance to upgrade one of your testing servers, so I'm kind of looking at Rajnil over there from USP, then you might, that would be very helpful, because you will have existing data in there, and that way we see, does it upgrade smoothly? Or do you run into any problems when you upgrade your server that should be fixed before we issue it? So any sort of testing, doesn't have to be technical testing, can be just user testing, can be you kind of trying to recreate a portfolio, or Stephen maybe importing a portfolio into the site and seeing, well, what does it look like now in this new version, then you're very welcome to do so. And if you're sitting at the edge of your seat and want to know when you'll finally be able to get your hands on that release, it is going to happen still in April. We haven't really set a date because it depends a bit on how the testing goes and how many bugs people find, but we envisage that we'll release it in the last week of April. Because our version is called Mahara 17.04, and that stands for 2017 and April. So we can't release it after the 30th of April. It needs to be in April because we are on a timed release schedule, and therefore it will go out, and your help will make it all possible so that we can achieve our timeline there. And if you have any questions, as usual, you can just send me an email, contact me on mahara.org, on Twitter, on all the other social networks that where we might be connected in. And we look forward to hearing from you and seeing how we can support you in your Mahara efforts through the community, because we are not just here to develop features or write the user manual or answer questions in the forums. We are also here to connect you with other institutions. So if you're wondering if somebody else has done what you're doing, do let us know if you can't find somebody, because we might have an idea with whom we can put you in touch so that you can get into conversations with them directly. Do you have any questions or comments on some of those new features? Pierre?
You said not to ask what was in 1710.
Yeah.
My question is probably crazy, but where do you see Mahara in 10 years?
That's a very good question, and a very difficult one, because as we heard from Mark yesterday, technology really moves quickly, and we are not just looking at how quickly technology moves, but also what's happening in the education space in particular. And so if we look back at Mahara, and I'm not going to repeat what Mark said yesterday, but if you look back, in the beginning it was really a personal learning environment. And it was meant to be extremely complementary to a learning management system. That's why there was no assessment in it. But it connected to Moodle and where you can do your assessment. But over the years, the use of portfolios in the institutions, and in particular the universities and schools that Mahara uses, it has changed. So while a lot of people do appreciate the personal learning environment aspect and chose Mahara in particular for that, so that because it's not an assessment tool, they also want to have features that help them with assessment. And specifically over the last year and a half, kind of the entire idea of the dashboard has come up. So dashboard is one of these new keywords that you should probably put into all your grant proposals or tenders or all that, because that's where everybody's jumping on. If you don't have a dashboard, you're kind of looking a bit sad. And so the idea of the dashboard is to have reports available for students, for teachers. Where am I at? Where's my progress? How much do I still need to do? For an instructor, where are my students at? How can I monitor my students? Which, of course, in the portfolio area can be quite tricky, because we don't really want to monitor students. And we don't want to force them into one way, but we kind of still want to use the portfolio as one of the tools within our organizations to track the learning and to help them with their learning. But if we don't know how we can support them, it makes that a bit hard. And that's where all the reporting, learning analytics, and so on comes in. So over the next year, I know that we are looking more into assessment features and reporting features. There is a project by the University of Sussex and Dublin City University in the UK that has kicked off kind of a couple of months ago. But the development will start at the beginning of May, where we are looking into expanding the statistics in Mahara. so that instructors can look at individual students and see how many portfolios does student X have, how many portfolios did they have last week compared to this week. So more of that reporting, but not in, kind of ideally we don't want to use it in the creepy way, but really in the supportive way, where you can kind of help students get ahead, help find students that need your help. The other aspect, of course, is also looking into more functionality for smart evidence, making that more useful for organizations. There is discussions currently in the UK, and they might be able to talk about that at the next Maxi user group meeting, which is at the end of April in Brighton. So if you happen to be at the University of Sussex at that time, you're very welcome to join that group. So currently I can't really talk too much about it, but we do want to look more into smart evidence and expanding that functionality, but really looking into how can we expand assessment functionality that is suitable to portfolios, where we are not just doing assessment for the assessment part, but really how can it support learning? How can we still keep the personal learning environment aspect and the focus on the student? And what else can we do? And there might be organizations at some point that do force portfolios to automatically be shared with instructors. And that is fine. If that is what they need in their institution, then that can be done. But we might be not force that upon everybody. So also we are not forcing smart evidence on everyone. It is still that you can choose to work with it or not. The third aspect that we are looking into is also expanding LTI, as Robert and Julian already mentioned. Currently we only have single sign-on, but we do want to get it to transferring of content, using it for assessment purposes so that content doesn't have to be doubled up and things like that. So these are kind of the bigger areas, and that's really come out of the needs of organizations like yours, who said, well, we work with portfolios, but our students don't really use portfolios unless it's paired with assessment. And since you still need to do assessment in a lot of cases, you kind of have this tension that needs to be mitigated. And if we as software providers don't do that, then you're looking for something else. And so we are looking into how can we make it happen without losing the essence of what a portfolio is and what it should be. And kind of our discussions in the, just to briefly wrap this point up, over in the US a couple of years ago, it kind of felt like, oh yeah, portfolios are very much assessment centered. But then over the last 24 months, there's been this huge shift I found in discussions that people said, no, the portfolio is the students. Assessment is just one part of it, but actually the portfolio is much wider. So it seems like where people come around again to the idea of lifelong portfolios, life-wide portfolios for students, and really making it the student and only having the assessment as part of it. So I can't tell you where we will be in 10 years because you tell us where we'll be in 10 years, essentially. Okay, thank you so much.